Joe, it is an absolute pleasure, and I'm hugely excited to have you on this episode of Leadership Bites. Welcome.
Oh, thank you, Guy. Thank you very much for asking me to join you in this podcast.
Well, I came across you as my life seems to be led vicariously through LinkedIn, and I saw that you had a book out called Shoemaker. Joe Foster, the founder of REEBOK, and there was lots of great things in this that jumped out at me. And I was so eager to get you sort of on the podcast and to do what I do with people who've sort of ridden the horse, so to speak, is to, pull the learnings and the experiences. So just for those of you, and I've kind of said who and what you are there, but just for those of you, that don't know you formally, what are you known for, Joe? It'd be great just to kind of get that starting block with you.
Yes, well, indeed. I don't suppose many people know me because really they know REEBOK. And it was my good luck, good fortune, or whatever, to be the co-founder of REEBOK way back in 1958. We didn't start as REEBOK, we started as Mercury, but the story's in the book. But yes, if anything, right now I'm known as the co-founder with my brother of REEBOK, which became the #1 sports brand globally.
And that's a heck of a thing, to I think it's like when the Harry Potter book kind of got written, it wasn't probably going to be the Harry Potter book, if you know what I mean, that global phenomenon. And when you start off with something like this, did you have in your mind, global phenomenon, that's what I'm going for, global brand? Or did you have something a little bit smaller? And of course, if it takes off, that'd be marvelous. But what was that initial kind of thinking that you had, and maybe that kind of line of sight that you had on it at the start?
Are we just talking about the book, or are we talking about...
No, about the brand itself, when you started that kind of, well, the book's a global phenomenon as well. But...
Yeah, well, that's my latest sort of mission at the moment, this book. Yeah, well, with the brand, and you've read the book.
Yeah,
Jeff, we came from a family, really, of sports shoe manufacturers. We go back to 1895. We go back to my grandfather. And my grandfather in 1895, and that seems a long time ago, he made himself a pair of running spikes, a pair of shoes, spikes in the bottom. Not many, if anybody, had done that before. So he's a bit credited with inventing it, or he certainly pioneered it, because he got the idea from his grandfather. And his grandfather was a cobbler in Nottingham, who not only repaired street shoes, also repaired cricket boots. And cricket boots in those days, when you think about, 1885, 1890, cricket boots had spikes in. And obviously when grandfather saw this and he asked the question, Grandad, why have you got spikes in the bottom of these boots? To give them grip. And I guess that was the beginning of his business. But he was a member of his local athletics club, not a good runner, sort of halfway down the field, made himself a pair of spikes and came second, very unlikely second start of his business. Okay, we got that through. My grandfather was, was really fantastic. He knew how to create his business. He knew what this was all about. And by 1904, he had 3 world records in his shoes. The second decade of the 20th century, of course, that was World War I. So my grandfather's Bellaport was World War II, was the 1920s, where he supplied all the Olympic teams, and he even supplied the runners that were in the Chariots of Fire. So this brings me forward. He died in 1933. I was born in 1935. And it was one of those weird things. I was born on his birthday. Being born on his birthday, my grandmother, who was quite a firebrand, insisted I brought my name with me. So he was Joe Foster. I became Joe Foster. 4 years after being born, we had World War II. Blackouts, you name it, whatever. So I was 10 before they switched the lights on again. But I'd enjoyed that period. then 7 years of education, college, then 2 years of national service. Jeff and I, we just sort of worked at the factory as you do, you know, you're brought up, everybody's looking after you, but you go away for national service. Probably a bit like going into university these days, but national service had been more discipline to it. And we came back from 2 years, came back into the factory, and of course, we had a different mindset, totally different mindset, and we're looking at the company. Jeff had been in Germany, he'd seen Adidas, Puma, what they're doing. Came back to Foster's, they're making the same running shoes they'd been making in the 1930s. I mean, not many in the 1940s, because again, we had a World War until the end of it. So try as we did, we couldn't get my father and uncle who were then running the business, we couldn't get them to listen, mainly because they were at each other's throats. They were fighting, a bit like Adi Dassler and Rudy Dassler in the Dassler family and the Adidas. Yeah, but Rudy left the family, Nobody left the Foster family. All they did was fight with each other. It was 3 years after coming back into the family business that we decided, well, we decided a little before that we needed to leave. That was the only way really to change this situation. We'd done college at night, and so and that was very important for us because we knew how to make those 1930s running spikes, but we needed to know how to make 1950s, 1960s shoes, and probably athletic shoes at that. That's a big change. And we made a lot of friends, got a lot of people. Where do you buy your leather from? Where do you get this? So we could ask a lot of questions. So when we left to set up our own little unit in 6 miles down the road from Bolton in a place called Bury, which was near Rossendale Valley. Rossendale Valley is a shoe making area of Lancashire. So we were nearer to that. And we set up in this old brewery, which had 3 floors. The top floor we couldn't use. It was so full of buckets and tins and everything to catch all the water coming through a very, very sad roof. Anyway, and the middle floor, I mean, this building, a brewery had been in there for over 100 years and left it. And we were sort of second in after that. So that building was 125, maybe more years, and the floor was not exactly one that you would do cartwheels on. It was a bit bouncy, and we had machinery. We put it around the edges, but it was at the beginning, and that's how we started. And of course, we started as Mercury Sports Footwear, and well, you know the story. We tried, but it was our accountant really. I mean, bless his cotton socks. He told us we were making money, and we better register the name. Well, I mean, I'm 23. Jeff is 25. What do we know about life? You know, okay, we know how to look after ourselves with business now. So what do you do? And yes, so we had to go to see a patent agent because our name was registered. How do you find a new name? And he pointed through his window. It was a nice day. It's a nice day here today, by the way. It was a nice day there. And he pointed through the window to a sign, Kodak. And I'm saying, what's with Kodak? He said, well, it doesn't mean anything. It's a made-up name. That's what you need, really, a made-up name. He said, but don't bring me one, bring me 10. We go back and we look through things and we come up with birds like falcon and cheetah, different animals. This is it. But in 1943, when during the war, we had these athletic events, local players, and I won a race, 60 yards. I won the race. Wow, fantastic. Prize. What's the prize? A dictionary. But it's an American dictionary, a Webster's American Dictionary. I didn't know that at the time. I probably picked up the dictionary at that moment of time and probably almost threw it at my father and said, what's this? Who needs this? When did the dictionary? However, here we are now in 1960, and I pick up the dictionary which I'd won, and I'm thinking, the letter R. I like that. It's a nice, strong beginning to a word, R. So I'm picking up my dictionary, get to R in my Webster's. It's not long before you come to RE, and I came to REEBOK, Reebok, a small South African gazelle. Wow, gazelle, just what we need. That's fantastic. So that, with a load of other names, took it to the agent. He tested these out with the register and said, well, as it happens, because I told him, I said, look, I don't care about these other names. we've found this and we love it, and we've got to be in love with it. It's got to be our passion. And it so happened it was the only one clear. But the registrar insisted we could only go in Part B. What does that mean? Part B? They said, well, if somebody starts making shoes out of Reebok skin, we can't stop them saying they're doing that. Oh, right. And we thought that's a bit of a far-off chance, that. Yeah, you just got to think of that. Forget it. Right. However, 20 years later, the registrar come back and said, we've moved you from Part B to Part A. He said, because everybody now knows that Reebok is an athletic shoe. It's not an animal.
So it had shifted its meaning. And Joe, when you think back to the growth of Reebok, when you, maybe not when you very first started, or maybe it was, but when you were, you were getting that name confirmed, how far could you see in your imagination it growing? Did you have a sense of, gosh, if it ever got there, that would be amazing? I mean, did you have that global view in your mind, or where was your head at that point?
I think it's probably like running a marathon. It's, can I keep going? First job is can I do the 26 miles? How competitive am I? I need a base. We need Foster's at a failing company. We need to be a successful company. And I think we were happy to do that. But of course, we did concentrate on athletics. Soccer at that point was taken by Adidas. Unfortunately, Adidas taken over the soccer scene, and to join into that, we did make some football boots, but to actually get into it would be very costly, and we didn't have that sort of money. But what we did have, of course, was local athletes club. I could get into the athlete scene, which we did, and we saw our image grew tremendously, so we became very well known in athletics. But what was the view? Well, okay, as you move along, you think, yeah, but this is not a very big market, is it? It's like athletics in the UK. Yeah, but it's nice, and it's nice to be known as the one. But we could see Nike. Nike was across the water, and they were quite happy to take on, I think it was Brendan Foster at the time, and you're thinking, yeah, that's going to be a big challenge to us, because they're exactly in our market. We had everybody in the UK. We had them all beaten. We knew that. We were there. But when you start thinking of the Americans coming across and the size that the Americans would grow to, that was a big challenge. So instead of sort of worrying about that, I thought, why don't we go to America? Running. That's it. Running was starting to grow. My first event in America was 1968. The Board of Trade invited sports companies to export. They said they would pay for a stand at the NSGA show, which was the National Sporting Goods in America, in Chicago, in February. February in Chicago. I wouldn't wish anybody that. However, we accepted it because of the free return airfares and half the hotel bills. Fantastic. I didn't pick up any orders. I got a lot of people saying, oh, like your product. Yes, where do I get this from? And I was saying, England. And they're saying, is that New England? No, it is. It's across the water. Oh, that was like the biggest put off you could have, across the water. Well, when you get somebody over here, let us know, and we'll really love to try your shoes. Right. It's 1979. 11 years later, I get my distributor, Paul Fireman. But really, what I did learn is that to get into the American market, it's not good enough just to have a good shoe. You need what in America they call a hook. You need something that brings them in. And that came because running in America was growing fantastic. It was a category, it was out of this world. And Runner's World, a magazine, was driving this. And they with Nike were growing with them. And I'm thinking, no, we've got to get, well, Runner's World decided, he got so big, Bob Anderson was so big and so much into this, that he decided he could rate shoes. He could tell you which were the best, which he did. And for a couple of years, #1 shoe. I think it was Nike on both occasions. But what happens? You give somebody number one shoe, all of a sudden you've got 2-3 million Americans want to buy that shoe. How do you spy it? He's buying it from Onitsuka, which was Asics of today, Tiger. He's buying it from, they were making it for him. 6-9 months later, he managed to get the volumes. But of course, 3 months after that, the next number one shoe. So the retail trade, the retailers were absolutely wild about this because, first of all, they couldn't supply the shoe. Then when they could supply the shoe, it was going to be another one. It was going to be another number one. So we changed it. Bob Anderson changed it to a star rating. 5-star was the top, going down. For each category it was in. Well, you could have 3-4 shoes 5-star, which was my opportunity. I needed a 5-star shoe. And I knew how to get a 5-star shoe because we knew Bob Anderson. We knew how he was rating shoes. We knew exactly. In fact, we'd been across with him. I had a good chat in his office there in just north of San Francisco. Palo Alto, I think it's about. But so I knew well, and we did. I designed Aztec. And Aztec, that was going to be it. 1978, we tested this out. Part of the gold range we tested out in Edmonton in the Commonwealth Games, and we got lots of gold medals with our racing shoes because Aztec was part of the gold range. And the gold range was Aztec was the trainer, Midas was the road racing shoe, and Inca was the spike. All the same colors, but different sort of different categories. So I'm there then. Wonderful 1978 Commonwealth Games. 1979 February, I'm on the stand. Kmart come along. Kmart. Well, running is growing so much, and Kmart, well, you know, they obviously wanted to get into it. And Kmart, as most people know, are a very big wholesale, well, big retailers, giant retailers.
Yeah.
And they wanted 25,000 pairs. Oh, that's about 6 months work for our factory, that. Oh, 6 months. However, we hadn't been that dumb. We knew if we got a 5-star shoe, we'd need help. I got Barter on board. I had some good friends, and Barter would make my shoe. But then they came and said, but we need a better price. We also knew that because everything's moving to the Far East. Fortunately, I knew a couple of guys who represented the largest company in South Korea, and they were ready to make me some samples. So I had both things covered, but difficult times. And Paul Feynman came along. Well, Paul Feynman, he said, Joe, love to be your distributor, but we need a 5-star shoe. I said, Paul, come here. Look, Aztec, this is your 5-star shoe. Bound to be. Okay. Well, we're talking February, and it's August before the shoe edition comes out. So I'm backwards and forwards to America, seeing Kmart and keeping them warm. But I knew with Kmart will look at you as a square yard, I think they used to be then, or a square meter. And if you didn't sell enough product in that square meter, you wouldn't be back there again. That would be, you'd be out.
It was simple maths for them, right?
Yeah, just simple.
Yeah.
Paul Feynman, well, he and his brother and his brother-in-law, Steve and brother-in-law and mom, but Steve, and they were running this Boston camping. And Boston camping is an outdoor sort of camping. He went to the outdoor stores, not the sports stores that we were talking about, or even the shoe stores, because by then shoes had become so big that people like Foot Locker and others, they were just selling shoes. Massive store. So and of course that was different. And I think, well, Paul's in the outdoor, but at least he knows what wholesaling is, and at least he's got a company. We can just bolt onto that company, and it would be nice growth. Wow, yeah. And I like Paul. We got on. You know, it's some people you can meet, and it's fine. You know, and you can have a joke, and we can have go out for a meal, and you know. And I felt I was talking to somebody who owned a business, as against with Kmart. Who am I talking to? I remember visiting the Kmart office, and there was the girl there, and I said, look, I've got this appointment to see Mr. Biasati. Oh, right. And across the road there into that warehouse, I think about row 3, seat 29 or something like that. And I meet the guy, like, yes, it's just a numbers game. This is going to be almost impossible. Very pleasant guy. However, I went on to Boston and fine, meet up Paul, keep Paul warm, met the other guys, met the guys in his operation and whatever. However, it's the last week in July of 1979, and that's when the magazine comes out. The August magazine is usually a week before. I get Paul on the phone. Unfortunately, it's about 7 o'clock in the morning for Paul, which was a bit sort of, who's that? You know, who am I speaking to? It's Joe. Right. Paul, can you get down to the nearest kiosk and get a Runner's World magazine? Because this should be it. This should give us our 5 stars. Okay. An hour later, Paul came back on the phone. Joe, got the magazine. As I say, 5 stars. Wow, that was it. It was like the rocket went off. That was us. Fantastic. He said, but Joe, he said, Midas, 5 stars. Inca, 5 stars. We had 3 5-star shoes, all 3 categories. Wow. I mean, that was it. That was fantastic. All of a sudden, Reebok had made
Holy Trinity had been achieved.
Yeah. So that was us. We'd got ourselves into America.
Fantastic. That's so that was the thing then. What I've really heard there is, you just keep pushing, you keep going forward, and you kind of know where you'd like to go. You can't see the future, so you just keep going. And what I'm also hearing there is, though, a lot of effort, but without a quality product or a quality service. These two things, all the effort in the world, but with something that doesn't actually deliver the promise, then it's a lot of effort for something that people probably then very quickly fall out of love with. But actually, if they love the product, then hey, the effort then, brings it to life for people, because more people get to hear about it and see it. That's what I'm kind of reading into that, really.
Yeah, well, you need that influence. I mean, these days we talk about influencers.
Yeah.
Grandfather had influencers. He gave it to top athletes, and he influenced other athletes. Today, when you get to influencers, you're influencing street, and sport now is street and fashion. You don't do the volumes you do on performance shoes. Performance shoes are very small by comparison. It's street. It's when people just pick up a pair of trainers and put them, as we do now. Everybody has a pair of trainers just to go out in. Unless you're getting dressed up and being posh on a Sunday, or you've got one of those jobs where you need a collar and tie. And I gave up those years ago. You don't put shoes on. You put.
Well, even now, it's still probably just a really posh pair of trainers. So things are changing. Well,
there are posh trainers now. That's right. Yes. So that was it.
So I'd be really keen to pick up on, this marathon of a journey in some respects, and this great journey that you've been on. What's one of the hardest truths that you've had to deal with? And that might be from either feedback or a relationship with somebody or an expectation that you had, or whatever it might be, that actually you go, yeah, that was a moment where that was a hard truth for me to have to navigate or face into. Because when it's easy. But I think, the story isn't in when it was easy. The story's in the hardships, I think.
Oh, absolutely. Well, I mean, you're reading the book, and in the book, there are many hurdles that we came up against, many walls. And I think what happens is, because you decide, no, we're carrying on. You find a way through it, around it, over it. Yeah. And if you have a mindset, and that mindset, I think, grows, it's like, this is a challenge. This is part of the business, the challenges. And you can start to enjoy them, because like with changing the name, and an earlier event we had is when we got a letter. We'd only been about 4 or 5 years into business, and we got a letter from the Adidas solicitors to say that we were infringing the 3 stripes. Could buy, in those days we had 2 stripes and a T-bar, And so this letter, and rather than being sort of, oh my God, what do we do now? It was, wow, this is fantastic. They find out we're here. They're now a little bit worried about us. Now
We're dipping at the heels. Yeah.
That's right. So as we changed our name, we actually changed our silhouette. And our silhouette became the Vector. So again, and that was a bit inspired by the tail fin of the British Airways. They used to have this Speedbird, they called it, on the side. And so that was inspired a bit by that. And so, you know, these are things that, that you come across. We'd got a distributor. We were doing very nicely. So I decided we'd have a distributor. Well, somebody asked me if they could distribute our shoes in the UK. Yeah, why not? Because that gave me more time to look at other things. And then they went out of business, which again, and you couldn't see that at the time. It was one of my best friends who was a salesman there. As it happens, he went down to Barter, so he was able to help us when he was down in Barter. But you know, these are the problems that you come up against. And this happened so many times. And the sad thing is that we just got this 5 stars, and this was probably one of the most difficult times. Just got 5 stars. Just about to say, right, where do we go? Jeff became ill and died. It was like cancer just took him. You know, you think, wow, you know, he just looked after the factory. That was Jeff. Jeff loved the factory. You know, he didn't want to move out of it. He didn't want to do anything else. You do the other things, Joe. And so I'd done all the traveling. I did whatever was necessary, marketing, the whole thing. But I mean, that sort of having somebody solid there who just looked after that factory and just made it work. All of a sudden, not there. Because at that time, and as you've read in the book, Barter are doing jobs. He should have gone down to Barter because he would have been able. I couldn't do all the jobs. I had to entrust that to the people at Barter, and it nearly killed us. In a way, it was our ability to get through in America the first 6 months, but at the same time, it nearly killed us because they didn't do a really good job. However, so it probably made me feel, well, I've got to succeed. We've got to make this work because we were still a small company at that point. And Paul, you know, I went across to see Paul at his Boston camping. And when I arrived there, there's no Boston camping. What happened? Well, Paul must have been that fed up of going round and round and round year after year with his brother and his brother-in-law and doing what they were doing. They decided they would stop the company and go their own ways. And I think it was more or less just stop the company. I don't think there was any selling the company. I think it was just not happening. So Paul had no money. Yeah, he had a bit. Yeah, of course he had a bit. He mortgaged his property, but we've got 3 5-star shoes. We're launching and orders are going to come in like, boom. Brilliant. So we had to find something. We had to find money, because this is one thing you couldn't give up. And so we did find money, and it was Stephen Rubin of Pentland. I don't know if you know heard of Pentland. In fact, Stephen Rubin is the biggest taxpayer, or has been the biggest taxpayer in the UK during 2020. Fantastic. Yeah, love him. But anyway, he didn't particularly want to get involved in Reebok, but what he saw with Paul is an opportunity, because Stephen Rubin used to do sourcing of product in the Far East. So that was his company. ASCO was that company. He sourced it and sold it to British Shoe Corporation, all the people in the UK. And he wanted Paul to do the same in America. And Paul said, forget it. No, we're Reebok. That's what we're doing. And he did. So Reebok doing really, really well. And what Stephen didn't give much money. He just gave an open credit line. So you could just keep buying shoes, selling. And I think Stephen got a bit worried when Paul owed him 20 million. Yeah, that was a bit, oops. However, we're only, I think, about 2 years into running, doing very nicely. And there's this guy down in Los Angeles, Arnold Martinez. And he's a tech rep. So he's going around checking the stores, telling the stores good things about Reebok, etc. And but his wife, Frankie, coming home, really full of what are you doing? And she's going to these aerobic classes. And Arno says, what are aerobic classes? Well, we're actually exercising to music. It's fantastic. And her and her girlfriend said, we're really full of this. He said, I'm going down to have a look at this, see what's going on. Next time, he went down. What did he see? He saw an instructor there in running shoes, half the class in running shoes, and the other half, no shoes at all. Wow. A light bulb moment for Arnold. Why don't we make shoes for these girls? Fantastic. Off he goes to Boston to have a word with Paul. Paul, look, there's this new thing going on down in Los Angeles. It's aerobics. And Paul said, what, aerobics? What are you talking about? And so Arnold explains. And Paul said, look, Arnold, no. We're doing really well now with running. We're only 2 years into running. We're expanding. It's fantastic. No, we don't want to play around with anything like that. No, forget it. Arnold wasn't put off. He just went round to the back door, had a word with the production people. Said, look, guys, I want this nice glove leather shoe with a nice cushion sole. Can you make it? Give me 200 pairs. They did. It made him 200 pairs, which he gave to the instructors and whatever. And the rest is history. All of a sudden, women owned Reebok. These women, they weren't just wearing them for the aerobics classes. They were wearing them out into the streets and whatever. Big problem because they were made of glove leather. Glove leather, you can just tear it like a piece of paper. And when I heard that what they were doing, I was sort of, oh no, you can't do that. In saying that, we made World 10 for Ron Hill. That was glove leather, but we reversed it. So we used the suede side. For the aerobic shoes, that were using the skin side, and we're having to take a little layer off. And when you think, glove leather is less than 1 millimeter thick, and you've got to start taking a layer off to get the adhesive in. What was happening? It got too fragile around the ends, and in about 3, 4, 5 weeks, they were falling apart. Luckily, we were in California. We were in Los Angeles. The girls love the shoes. So what? We'll buy another one. And they did. It took us a month or so to get this problem right. But by that time, it was infectious. And you got people like Jane Fonda wearing them in her videos. And, you know, we went from a $9 million company to $30 million, to $90 million, $300 million, and $900 million in successive years. So, I mean, you know, you got to think, well, okay, by that time we had Stephen Rubin, and Stephen was getting very nervous at the amount of money it was taking. But by the time you get a company doing 300 million turnover, the banks are getting more interested. So the banks were helping as well. But it's not that. Money becomes the easy point, the easy problem. It's how do you get the product? Yeah, how do you go from $300 million to $900 million? There's not, you know, the amount of product you need for that. And again, a little bit of luck came our way. Nike at that point, they'd been going really well. All of a sudden, everything went a bit quiet for them. And they lost traction, and they had to pull out of about 3 factories in South Korea. We just marched straight in. So that saved us. That was it. Because I remember sitting down with Paul, and Paul saying, Joe, I know how to stop this. He said, but if I do, I don't know how to start it again. Because the demand was such that, you know, and we were starving the business because you couldn't get the product. But we, as I say, with Nike going into the problem, it did help. So by the end of 1989, when we were about just short of 4 billion, I decided it was my time to retire. Because all I was doing, okay, since putting Paul on, I'd put on about another 30 different countries. For 10 years, I've been just going round the world, putting on new distribution, growing our distribution. And, but by that time, it was, you know, we had so many lawyers, we had so many accountants, and so many people who were just selling boxes of shoes, not just a pair of shoes, it was boxes, you know. And just in the late 80s, we'd actually become number 1. We'd overtaken Nike, we'd overtaken Adidas. So we were, I think they called us in Sports Goods Intelligence, I think it was called us Numero Uno, and they called Nike the Eager Beavertons. I can't remember what they called Adidas, but we were number one. So I thought, well, you know, one of your early questions, did you expect that? No, we didn't. Yeah. And what was the journey like? Well, the thing is that everything was going out so fast, so you were just going with it. We were running with it, and it, you know, nothing came as a surprise. Everything came as, okay, we'll cope with that. Okay, it was like, what's next? Okay, Monte Carlo, you're going to do the Princess Grace Trust Foundation pro tennis tournaments, and we had all the stars from Hollywood there, and it was absolutely fantastic. You know, you're meeting people. Meeting royalty, you know, we were supplying Charles, Sarah Ferguson, Major Ferguson, Diana, we supplied her with shoes, and Harry and Wills. So, you know, it was fantastic. And from Hollywood, you know, people like John Forsythe, Roger Moore, Chuck Norris. Yeah, I mean, all these people were there, and I have a nice photograph with Chuck Norris. And
Chuck Norris is a personal hero of mine. So it's like,
yeah. I'm obviously telling him what to do in his next movie.
Of course, just giving him a bit of coaching advice. You know, I get that.
Yeah. So, you know, when you've moved into this within 3 or 4 years from doing, you know, just slugging away, that all of a sudden you're in Monte Carlo, you're meeting. I went to the palace and met Prince Rainier. You know, I was in and have a sort of glass of champagne with him. Yeah. So from there to there, and it's like, wow. And you know, I got to that point and say, okay, but you know, what's happening? And so I retired. I did go back to Monte Carlo on a few occasions and do a few more things. But when I get out, I can liken it a bit to the Eagles at Hotel California. You can check out, but you can never leave.
Yes. I get it.
Yeah. And that's been it with REEBOK. I mean, even today, yeah. In fact, it was only last week we sent a whole pile of 15 books. They asked for 15 books for the executive, for the whole executive board wanted the book. So that was only last week. So I still do a lot with REEBOK, and yeah, it's fun.
So, you know, I've got a load of questions here, Joe, but I'm gonna be courteous to your time. But one of them is, did you ever have a moment with yourself where you kind of paused and looked in the mirror, or the proverbial mirror, and went, what is going on? You know, as in, you know, there I am, this lad from, you know, the UK. Yeah, did you ever have a moment, you know, or were you ever conscious of just taking time and just recognizing the experience you were having?
You know, it's funny that I do get asked the question, and now is the time when I do sort of, did that really happen? It's in the book, yes, certainly. Did we? You know, what did you do? in the 60s, we didn't have computers. We didn't have mobile phones. The best I had was a calculator, and I'm jumping on planes with a handful of American Express dollar travelers checks. That's all I had. You know, you didn't have credit cards. You know, and I'm thinking, no, I didn't really have. But during the time, it was like, it's a need. The next step, I've got to do this. That's waiting. No time to stop. You know, it was such an uphill rush that, and in fact, we weren't controlling the company. The company was controlling us at that time. It was really, how do you keep up with a company that's growing like this? And so, you know, we didn't grow other strengths. We were just keeping things going. So it was a fantastic chase. And like I said, did you stop it? No, we had no time to stop.
Yeah.
You know, there are times possibly when I must have reflected, but I think it was like, what's next? I think it was more, what's next? Where next? And rather than sort of, just a minute, let me park myself here and think about it. And possibly I'd have thought about it. Maybe I'd have got scared. Yeah. Maybe I'd have been, oops, whatever. But as I say now, you know, and quite a few years after, I have sat down. In fact, when I sat down to write the book, I'm thinking, you go through the stories. Did we do that? Yeah. Did that really happen? Yeah. Did I meet so and so? I mean, only on the second time that I'd met John Forsyth, who you may have known was Dynasty and Carrington and big whatever. And I'd said loads of people, and he just came straight up to me and said, "Hi, Joe, how are you going?" And I'm so dumbstruck. "John, how do you remember my name?" I mean, I could never remember people's names. Yeah. "That's okay, guy, I remember yours."
Listen, I'm still getting over the fact you've met Chuck Norris. So here's a question I really want to ask you, which is, as a business grows, you know, I love the phrase "an uphill rush." Actually, I just noted that down. I think that's I don't know why I've not heard that before, but it was an uphill rush, which kind of says it all, really. But as a business grows, I think for a leader, there are two. I mean, there's process and there's all that kind of stuff that says, "Hey, we got the systems and all that kind of stuff." But talent and letting go, and I'm interested in that because, you know, you've got to bring talent in, or you've got to grow the talent because it's expanding. And then you've got to let go, because if you don't let the talent have its space, then they themselves don't grow and maybe even become disenfranchised and leave. So I just wondered about that relationship with, maybe it's two different questions. You know, how did you bring talent in? How did you know who would fit that non-stop level of action required and wouldn't be a 9 to 5? And maybe how did you find it? Did you find it easy to give that responsibility to others, or were there any lessons there? So it's maybe one question, or maybe it's two. I'm not sure, but I'll let you answer as you see fit.
Well, it's a field full of questions, really, isn't
Yeah.
it? It's like, well, I never considered myself that bright, that brilliant, that whatever. I consider as possibly I'm made more of grit than of any intellect or any brilliance. I'm made to keep going. And I consider that if people are going to join the company, it's because they know how to do it better than I do. And if they know how to do it better than I do, those are the people who should come in. And it's always a question with people. You say, well, look, you know, okay, report to me, but don't bring me your problems. Bring me your answers. You know, and if you have a problem with having too many answers, we'll sort it out. But don't bring me problems. You bring the answers. And that way, people worked on their own. You gave them things to do, and yeah, they get on with it. And give them ownership. You know, they all need a bit of ownership if you're going to really live it, and you're going to feel it's your passion, because the culture was that. The culture was a winning culture. That was what it was, a winning. You know, we're going forward, we're winning. So we're going to need more people. And okay, not everybody that comes into your company is the right person, but yeah, if you're honest enough, you soon talk that through with somebody, and if it's time that they move on, they move on. And it's good to do that, rather than say, well, this is first lesson, you know, do it again, and you know, no, that's not me. You're either working with me, you don't work for me. So I'm not going to sack you. You walk out because it's not working. That worked for me. It wasn't being a boss. It was like, this is the way we're going. And if it doesn't fit, then you need a new hole to put the peg in. You know, this is not your hole. But basically, you find that people who want to work for you are the best people, not just people with skills. You can, you know, if they've got some intelligence, they'll learn the skills. And you can't do it all yourself. As you say, you've got to give something up. That's why I decided my best route was to do the global distribution and grow that. So I just went on to that one, which was good, because I had to sectionalize the country. I think they're all into EMAS and whatever, Eastern, you know, everybody now has a time sort of journey, so that you look at that time area. So, you know, the big companies do that. You know, we developed some of that, which you've just got to do it. But I enjoyed the travel. I'd been traveling. It got into the blood, I suppose, you know, and I needed to travel and needed to communicate with people. So
It's quite natural for you to bring people in to allow you to play to your strengths, I guess.
Well, yes, I mean, to bring something more. So for me, that wasn't a problem. And yes, you've got to release certain things, and then you can focus.
So during this illustrious career that you've had, or this history that you've created, whatever the phrase might be, I'd love to get a sense of what's the best advice that you've ever been given.
Well, it's difficult. It really is difficult to say whether you ever given advice or where you pick things up. I've always found that people who give you advice, be wary. Be very wary, because they are experts. And I've been told, well, X is the unknown quantity, spurt as a drip under pressure. It's a difficult thing to take advice. I think for somebody to comment as against give advice, but I've found out that most of the advice I have had has turned out to be not too good. It's turned out to be, if you can put something into a little square, I can tell you how to run the square. But if life is so simple as to put into a little square, then you're not going to go anywhere. And an expert tends not to go anywhere. An expert tends to be in the little square, telling you how to run that little square. But life is usually all over the place, and indeed, it was all over the place for me. So people give me advice now. I mean, I really valued people like John Willie Johnson, who was in the book, who was quite a big shoemaker up in Rossendale Valley, and but he was quite eccentric. And I met him at these sales. The business, as I said, everything was going far east. So all the shoe industry in Lancashire, shoe industry in the UK, there was probably 2 or 3 companies going out of business every week for 3 or 4 years. It was incredible. And we used to go to sales, and John Willie Johnson used to go to sales. And I met him there because he used to sit in front of the auctioneer and he bid for very little. But when things were not bidded for, nobody bid for it, the auctioneer would look at John, and John would just nod. And so he'd take that, and he bought everything: stuffed birds, stuffed crocodiles, you name it. He'd buy everything. And he showed me through his warehouse because he decided that we should travel together. And it's in the book where I wanted this. I saw this machine. It's a pounding up machine. You won't know what a pounding up machine is, but it knocks the creases out of toes of boots. It knocks all the creases out, made it look nice. I said, John, can I buy this off you? No. No, right. Oh, can I rent it off you? I said, no. No, he wouldn't. I said, okay, John. He said, Joe, he said, you can have it. You can have the machine. He said, give me back when you're done with it. And that wasn't just one machine, it was more. And he actually got his men to put it on the wagon and deliver it to me and fix it into our production line. Yeah. So it's friends like that, friends like Shackleton, Shaq, who, he got me into trouble with Lawrence, but then he got me out of trouble with Barter. And, those friends, it's amazing that you can pick people who you can just get on with. And they, I think, realizing the value of them was much better than somebody giving me advice.
Yes. So it's being around good people. And as life unfolds, as you serve them, they'll serve you.
Oh, absolutely. Yes.
Yeah.
People who don't want anything, they just like what you're doing, like you, likable characters. And so they want to help. They want to participate.
Yeah.
They're nothing. They just want to see if they can help you get that extra mile. They can probably see, look, I've got a great company, but I'm not going anywhere. He's got a miserable company that got tremendous potential. Can I give him a bit of a leg up? So yes, people are willing to do that for you.
So I've got a penultimate question before I ask you one last question about the book, which is, there's a lot of, you've referenced it, influencers. There's a lot of people in the world, the social media world, that not the social media, there's a lot of publicity around, making your own business, being your own boss. And these days it's all around the social media sort of platform. But there's also a lot of people at a local level. I walk around and they're barbers, they've got coffee shops, they've got, and they're not going to be global perhaps, but they're just running their business. And there are a lot of youngsters, I think, that look at that. I don't want to work for somebody. I'd like to work for myself. And I wonder if you ever get that sort of youth question. I'm 23, I'm 25, I'm 18. I make coffee, I do coffee, or I do hair, or whatever it is. It's nothing to do with shoes, Joe. But as a young entrepreneur starting out, what's the one thing, if you were going to say something to me, that I could take away, and maybe sort of reflect on and think about?
Well, I think the beauty of being an entrepreneur is, like you say, 18, 23, 25, is be young. And if you're young and you've got some idea, just go ahead. Don't ask too many questions. Give it a try. Too many questions will put you off, because you ask a question, somebody's going to give you an answer, and you get too many negatives. I think believe in yourself, and just go and do it. Just give it. Just don't, because when you're young, and if it goes wrong, you can change, you can move. And when you are young, you can make those moves, because you'll need to. And any business you start up, it's not just going to be straight line. It's not straight line. There's going to be something there that happens. Maybe you didn't think about it, but if you had thought about it, and this is where I come to, if you get too much advice, because, think about this, think about that. We never thought of registering our name. We never thought of these things. No, we just went on. So you get around it. So you learn to get around the obstacles. You're young. Don't try and get around them by asking too many questions. Get a good idea. Believe in yourself.
And I like that. Just learn to deal with things as they crop up. Almost get moving, get some momentum.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And then stuff will happen, and then you'll deal with it.
That's right.
Yeah.
People can't train you how to avoid problems. They can only say, one of the things of being in the Boy Scouts, we were in the Boy Scouts, and it was a serious Boy Scouts hours. It wasn't just somebody going out having a bit of fun. Oh no, our scout leader, he was really good, really serious. And the motto is be prepared. And I think throughout business, if you can think of that, be prepared. Just you won't know, but just be prepared. Whoops, it's something. So, and it's always a good motto on that.
Yeah, I love that. So, Joe, as we come to an end, as we start to sort of wrap up the book, Shoemaker, where's that taking you? You publish a book, you have in essence, it's a memoir, it's a history, it's I've been fascinated in the reading of it. There's elements of just great narrative and story, and I think it's one of those books I'm probably going to read again, which is rare for me, because I think it's got so much value in it. But where's that journey taking you, in terms of it being published? And podcasts didn't exist 20 years ago, and now they do, and here you are, you're on one. So what's your journey been with it, and where's that taking you at the moment?
Well, I think probably if you look at the character in the book, this is now a challenge. It's given me a challenge again. It's got to be a bestseller. And so no point in writing a book, no point in it sitting there. Okay, that's great. But I started writing the book because so many variations of how did Reebok begin? So many people had guessed at it, came out with their best ideas. And this is in Wikipedia, Google. It began here. In fact, there's a photograph, I think, in Wikipedia of a guy called Joe Foster, and I've no idea, not a clue who he is. No idea. Can't even think about it. Yeah, is that really? Where did he come from? So I'm trying to put the world right. I'm trying to put the world to rights with Reebok. But then it's just been well challenged. Well, let's get it to a bestseller. So this is what we're doing now. We're thinking, right, come on, let's get it. So I'm back to the same challenge. what are the obstacles? Where can we push it? And so it is a challenge. So yeah. So maybe watch this space. Watch this space. Maybe in 12, 18 months' time, we'll have a bestseller on that. And then, I mean, a few people have still asked me, it should be a film. Well, maybe it should, but that's other people's decisions, not mine. But it'd be fun.
I think the REEBOK story has got to be a film, so or a damn good documentary, one or the other.
Yeah.
So listen, Joe, I'm going to, with a bottle of wine and a curry, I could spend the entire evening just asking you questions and picking your brain and listening to the narrative. It's overwhelmingly interesting for me personally. So I just want to thank you from myself, and I'm sure there are listeners that have just kind of gone, wow. I think you can tell it's the tip of the iceberg in terms of the conversation. I will put links to the book in the description, and I'm just going to hold it up again for people. Shoemaker Joe Foster, the founder of REEBOK. It's an excellent read, and I say that as a person that reads a lot of books and is relatively ambivalent about them. So I sometimes pretend I've read them, but I'm actually reading this one.
Well,
so just from me to you, thank you so much. And if you'll just stay on for a few moments just to check that all the recordings worked. But other than that, thank you so much, Joe.
Well, thank you, guys. It's been a pleasure.